I've got a volunteer coming up here. We're going to show you what is important about size and space. I brought some things to help in the determination of putting in some dimensions. So I've got a couple of pieces of cloth here. Open one of them up. And you're familiar with the ADA asking for a special dimension of size in front of appliances. What is that magical dimension in front of appliances, in front of the sink, in front of the toilet? You should have that memorized, right? 30 by 48. That's what it looks like, just in case you didn't understand that. I thought we'd put it on the floor just to understand it and to hold it up, because that's the magic of, that doesn't look like much space, does it? It's the minimum requirement. That's the minimum that a person in a wheelchair needs, depending on their wheelchair. I'm a very petite person. My wheelchair was sized to be hip to hip, as small as it could be, so that I can maneuver through the community. So as we look at my relationship, and just hold that in front of me in terms of width, you can see what that does. It just barely makes it as I go into a space that's 30 inches wide. Take that tape measure that's on the table and let's share with them, what is it that I need if I were going anywhere not to bust my knuckles? So I'm just going to hold the chair and let him measure beyond my knuckles. What does it take? All right, she's seeing the elbows too.
Yeah, at least 30, right?
At least 30.
At least 30.
That's knuckle to knuckle. Mm-hmm. And as she said, depending on the position of the elbow, it depends on how much force I need. Then I've got even more. What's the minimum clearance of an ADA door? Do you see that 2 inches is not that much more? Mm-hmm. What does a 36-inch door give you? Almost 34, doesn't it? See the difference between universal design and ADA? So we're trying to say, can you accommodate a little bigger space than the minimum of 30 by 48? All right, let's take the next piece of cloth. The turning diameter for a wheelchair is what? How many feet? 5 feet. This is 5 feet, just to show it. I'd like to encourage you, when you're doing your floor plans, to put somewhere on the plans these turning radius, maybe a little red circle like our architect Pat Manley did. He showed us very clearly that we had a 6-foot turning radius in front of the dishwasher and by the sink. It was helpful for me to make sure that I could manipulate in that kitchen rather than having to go forward and back and making odd T-turns. So that's our turning radius. It's important. Also mark the 30 by 48 on the plan, just to make sure, because the planning is critical. It's much more expensive in the field if it was done wrong, and really expensive if you build it wrong and you get a complaint later, and then you've got 10 units you got to go back in and fix. Accessibility was the top complaint for fair housing. 55% of the complaints were about accessibility in fair housing. Thank you. So we've got that. Now let's take that tape measure and do some other little measurements. As we look at the average adult, we're looking at the 5-foot turning radius and the 30 by 48 inch. We're looking at the average adults in terms of vertical reach range is between 18 and 48 inches. So 18 inches, where is that on me from the floor to 18? Here?
Yep.
Okay. There we are at 18. That's why we have prescribed the outlets there at 18 inches, because someone who is in a wheelchair may be not able to bend down and keep their balance. So at 18, that electrical outlet can be plugged in easily. All right, let's go to 48 on the vertical reach from the floor.
There we go. 48.
All right, 48 is pretty close to my eye level. Where's my eye in relation to 48? Maybe 42, 45, 42. That impacts the thermostat. So I usually say around 42 to 48 on thermostat placement for the middle of the box to the floor. 48 is a good reach for me if it's a cabinet, a shelf where I'm getting folded clothes. 48 doesn't strain me so much. But if I try it up here, then it's starting to strain, especially if it's got any weight to it. So if it's a pot or a turkey or I don't know, something from the gardening shed that's heavy, I don't want any of my shelves any higher than this because that's going to create a problem for me. So as you're looking at storage space, I would like you to have 50% reachable from a seated position as a guide for you, at least 50% of the storage space from a seated position. So that would mean nothing higher than that 48 inches in terms of our reach range. Let's measure the chair seat in terms of I have an air cushion on this. It's a cushion so that I don't have skin breakdown. So at the top of this cushion, I'm at what?
It's like about 20.
I'm at 20 inches. That impacts what? The height of the toilet, the bathtub decking, so that when I transfer, I have as even of a transfer as possible, rather than having to go up too high or down too low. Again, these are averages, and we saw my eye level is about, in his estimation, a little lower than 48 inches. I sit a little lower. So I sit, I think, at 4'2" right now. Other people will be taller depending on their whole dynamics, but at least we can look at this as an approximation. So thank you for helping with that dialogue. I appreciate your participation today. Is that helpful to you? Is there anything surprising or any other information that you have seen along the way in terms of these planning dimensions?